to Xamarin Dev Days Kitchener. If you're going to tweet today, definitely use the hashtag Xamarin Dev Days, and then also use the tag Kitchener. So that way we have hashtag Xamarin Dev Days, hashtag Kitchener, because I want to be able to see what people are tweeting about the event. Xamarin wants to see what you're tweeting about the event, and so does Microsoft, since Microsoft bought Xamarin. So they're very interested to see what's going on today. So I'll take some pictures. If there's people that don't want their pictures taken, let me know, raise your hand. Anyone care? I'll mostly take pictures probably from the back of the room, Jonathan, really. So people really won't see your faces as much, but I'll take some pictures, tweet them out as well. If you have a problem, definitely raise your hand, let me know, and I won't post those pictures. All right. So let's turn this on. What's the agenda for today? I'm going to start off giving you guys an introduction to Xamarin. How many people here have not used Xamarin or played around with it? Okay, good. So that'll be interesting to you. Following me will be Mark Artiega from Redbit. He'll talk about cross-platform development using Xamarin Forms. And then Jonathan Dick from Xamarin, Microsoft, whichever one you want to call it. He's here to talk about connected apps with Azure, which is awesome. So we're going to go from beginner to intermediate to advanced topics, all within the session, the morning session. Then we're going to have lunch, which is courtesy of my business, Soloa Solutions. I sponsored it. I sponsored the room. Yes, you're welcome. And then in the afternoon, we're going to do a workshop. So we'll actually have hands-on labs. Just before we break for lunch, I'll put the link up where you can download the hands-on labs from GitHub. And then make sure you load them during lunch, and then you'll get to business in the afternoon. All right, so Syncfusion's also a sponsor of the event. I guess you'll see something in the bag from them. I'll also post this link up afterwards so you can claim your free license from Syncfusion. And then Microsoft is also a sponsor. Thanks to them, we have Jonathan, we have the swag, we have everything, we have the content, and then my business and Zoomy. Yes, awesome. Canada's Technology Triangle User Group, which is my user group, our user group, which we run in this area, in Kitchener-Waterloo. They're kind of a supporter, so through our user group, we were able to set up this event, get the registrations, get you guys interested, and use the usual venue to run it. All right. Let's get down to it. So, introduction to Xamarin. If you haven't used it, I just want to kind of start off talking about how it is a platform to allow you to develop cross-platform applications. And so you can target iOS, you can target Android using C#. It is not a hybrid development platform. It is true native applications. They do compile down to native. But Xamarin isn't just about developing the applications, it's the whole solution. It's also about testing your apps and learning. There's the develop part, there's testing with Xamarin Test Cloud, there's building it with Visual Studio Team Services as well, and then if you hook in Mapping Cloud for the iOS end, and then distributing it and monitoring it through Hockey App. So when we're thinking about Xamarin, we're not just thinking about the initial part, which is the development, we're also thinking about testing it for quality, we're also thinking about setting up your build and deploy pipeline so that you can set up these rapid deployments, have it tested in the hands of beta testers, and then you can publish it to the store. Okay. So in a nutshell, when you think about Xamarin, I want you to think about all those components, how they all tie together, and that's essentially the essence of mobile app development. It's not just about developing the application. All right, so with Xamarin, we're going to talk about how that's different than traditional mobile app development. So in traditional mobile app development, you see the silos. You see iOS developers working in their own team. You see Android developers working on their own team. And Windows developers off in the corner getting made fun of. And so the problem with this approach is that you have 3 different teams in an enterprise working on the same product, redeveloping the same code, but in their own team. So you see a lot of rework happening that's really not necessary. It's not efficient. And even if you are an indie developer, you're going to have to learn Objective-C, you're going to have to learn Java, and then you also have the C#, which you can leverage to develop those apps. And again, that's not efficient. If you're thinking about developing mobile applications and you want to get them out soon, you want to publish them soon, it really starts looking like it's a lot of work and a lot of headache. There are also the hybrid platforms, which kind of gave the promise of write once, run anywhere, but we've all seen the disasters that happen from that. I mean, it's great for web developers who really want to get an app out fast, that a simple application, perfect. But then when you start to see enterprise using hybrid applications and they want these advanced, complex mobile apps pushed out to their users, pushed out to their employees, what do you see? You see performance problems. You see limitations with what that can be done in hybrid. I see a lot of it. You know, I have clients that have come to me and said, we tried it in PhoneGap, we hit a wall, now we have to start over. And so I recommend Xamarin. The reason I recommend Xamarin is because you have the capability to develop these native apps that also share a common code base. So you have your shared code, which is the business logic, and you can put it in a library, which is a shared library called the Portable Class Library. And that can be used across all of your platform applications. So then essentially the only thing that you're concerned with is developing the UI on each platform and any device-specific code that goes in there. And then you have the rest of your business logic in a shared library, which is used across all 3 platforms. So when you're thinking about your models, your view models, which contains business logic, service calls, like web service calls, there's a lot of common APIs that can be used. And we went there. Oh, no, we didn't. Okay. There we go. So when you're thinking about the common APIs that you're going to leverage in your portable class library, you start to see a lot of the namespaces that look familiar. So there's a lot of those system namespaces in .NET. How many people here are not .NET developers? Everyone's a .NET developer. So these namespaces all look familiar to you, right? Everyone's used to them. They're all good. And then you have the platform-specific API. So if you're actually developing a UWP app or Windows app, you have those specific APIs which are available to you in the UI layer, but the system namespaces, there's some common ones there that are available in the shared library. Same with iOS. So you have your common APIs which you can code against in your portable class library and share it within your projects. But then you also have 100% access to the iOS APIs within your platform-specific project, and then you can access those through C#, which is pretty amazing. It's pretty neat to be able to access UI, APIs from within C#. I know I was blown away the first time I had to do it, and I thought it was really cool. It gives you a lot of power. You're not limited in any way. And then there's Android, so the same thing applies here. You have the same set of APIs in your live portable class library, but then you also have the Android APIs, which you can access from your Android project. The benefits that you have here is that as Xamarin is compiling, it is compiling down to native. So as you can see, when you develop an iOS app, it is going to compile and it's going to generate an IPA. And that IPA is a true native app. Same with Android. So it compiles, uses just-in-time compiling, and compiles to an APK. So you actually have a true Android APK library that you're going to publish to the store. You have nothing that holds you back in Xamarin as opposed to Java or Objective-C development. You have access to everything there. Okay. So that slide says it all. Anything you can do in the native libraries, like in the native development environments, you can do in Xamarin using C#. The great thing about Xamarin is that it's always pushing out updates. They have 3 channels, alpha, beta, and stable. If you're adventurous and you like risk and you like to play the stocks, definitely stay on the alpha channel. You'll get a lot of these updates immediately. Like, it's insane how fast they push out updates. Beta's a little bit more stable, still a little bit of risk. And then the stable channel, I generally use for client development. Like when I'm actually doing enterprise development for my work, I stay on the stable channel. But the great thing about them is they're always pushing out updates. So when iOS has a release, Xamarin has a release that encapsulates those new APIs. They're always keeping up with Android and iOS. It's really great. The benefit now and the interest now that people are having, as you all are aware, when Microsoft acquired Xamarin, is now Xamarin is included in Visual Studio. And that includes Visual Studio Community, which is a free download. So you can download that, and now you have access to Xamarin, and you can start developing cross-platform native applications. Now, in order to turn on Xamarin in your environment when you're installing Visual Studio, you have to pick a custom install because it's not installed by default. They don't want to assume that everyone wants to do cross-platform development. And then you just select the C# Xamarin option that's there. And then you install. So if you already have a Visual Studio installation and you haven't turned those on, you can always go into the programs, change the installation. It pops up this update dialog, and then you can just follow those same steps to turn on Xamarin in your environment, and then it will download and install it. So another good option in Visual Studio that you really we're seeing improvements on is you have access to the APIs, but now you also, not just in code, but you also have access to the designer. So there's a really slick Android designer that's available, and you can drag and drop controls on there, you can change properties within them, just as you would in your Windows applications, and it really renders it nicely. It's very nice. You can pick different screen sizes and resolutions, and it'll render the designer. And all your layout files are saved as XML layout files, but with a .axml extension. It's exactly the same markup that you would see in an Android layout file. How many people here have developed an Android? Nobody's. No. Okay, so you went, okay. So essentially the markup is the markup that is used in Android layout files. Just the only difference is that in an Android project it's a .xml extension, and in Visual Studio it's a .axml extension. So if somebody has an Android project and they say, hey, we want to convert it to Xamarin, what can we do? What can we reuse? One thing you can actually reuse are the XML layouts. You could just bring them in and give them an AXML extension, and that markup's all the same and it'll apply. You just have to redevelop the coding end of it in C#. So it's pretty nice that way. Everything that you're going to learn about Android and Xamarin C# development, it translates to the native development. It's very much, kind of gives you a good insight as to what's actually happening. So Visual Studio also has emulators that are built in. Actually, no, I think you actually have to install them separately. Sorry, you do have to install them separately. But they are very nice, slick emulators. You can download, install them, and that gives you an opportunity to debug your environments when you're developing Android applications in this Android simulator. Okay? It's very nice, especially if you don't have a device on hand just for rapid application development. It's really nice to use that. Similarly, there's an iOS designer. So you still have the same options to drag controls onto your storyboard, set properties, work with your projects. It's really nice. Design your layout. Everything looks good. Now, I'm not going to lie. Designing UI for iOS can be a bit tricky. There are some elements that you have to get used to, possibly auto layouts if you want to dig into that, just to have it render really nicely. But you do have all of that available to you in the designer and Visual Studio to work with and play with and get your UI working quite right. So it's really nice, very slick. I'm very impressed with the improvements that have happened over the last couple of years with the designer and Visual Studio. So recently, Xamarin just, they announced at Evolve that there was this ability to now run an iOS simulator that ends up being remoted on your Windows machine. So in order to develop and publish iOS applications, you do need a MacBook. So let me back up here. I kind of skipped over that part. As you're developing your iOS applications, you do need a MacBook. You need to be connected to that Mac if you're on a Windows machine. If you're on a MacBook, you're good to go. Brandon, looking at you. But what happened before was as we were connected to the Mac machine and developing iOS on the Windows machine, every time I want to run and test in the simulator, I'd have to then turn to my MacBook, load my, run my application. It loads in the simulator on my MacBook, so it was always going between Windows and the MacBook. With this new remoting option that's in Visual Studio, that simulator now pops up on my Windows machine. I don't even have to look at my MacBook. It can be in a different room in my house, and then in the office, wherever you're working, it doesn't matter, as long as it's on the same network. Okay? So it's pretty nice that way that you have that option. Then there's Xamarin Studio for those that have a MacBook. So there's no Visual Studio option, but there is Xamarin Studio Community installed. You can download it. When you download and install Xamarin, it installs by default. And it is very nice. It has a nice new dark theme. It has a nice UI. It has a lot of the features and the look and feel of Visual Studio. So if you're used to Visual Studio, you go into Xamarin Studio, there's a few differences, but for the most part, you'll be comfortable in that IDE because it is very similar. And also at Evolve, Xamarin announced that they have open sourced Xamarin. So now that is available, open.xamarin.com. So if you want to contribute to the future of Xamarin, you can submit your pull requests there. It's pretty awesome. Now I'm going to take a break and let you guys ask a couple of questions, because I know I'm talking fast, but we are in limited time, so I just want to get through everything. But does anyone have any questions so far? Norbert.
So from what I understand, to make something work on an Apple, there's actually a version of Mono that's packaged with the application. Can you kind of get into that architecture just a little bit, or will you get into that later?
Yeah, so in order to develop on a MacBook, you have to install Xcode. That's the first thing that you have to do. And then you have to install Xamarin, right? So then that installs the libraries on top of it. But Xcode is really what is used for compiling and signing the iOS applications that you're building. So it's really important, and it is a big install. So that's the key factor there.
So it's no longer loaded when it goes out to the, because what I remember is the original Xamarin stuff included a kind of a packaged model that deployed with it in order to be able to do the just-in-time compilation of C# stuff, right?
There is still, you will notice your Xamarin packages, or like Xamarin IPAs, anything that you develop with Xamarin, it is a little bit bloated, but not very much. But because it is packaging it in the IPA, I don't think it's any different now.
There's still it's technically the garbage collector is still running inside of your iOS process there. It's a really optimized version for iOS.
Okay. So there's still that little, that engine.
Absolutely. That's how you get things like, not having to worry about memory counting and everything.
It doesn't make that big of a difference in the package size, but you will notice a slightly larger package size. And the initial run, the one thing that I've noticed a lot is Xamarin applications that you develop, the initial run on the device might be a couple seconds longer to do that initial load, but then any subsequent loads on the device after that are pretty good. So you will notice that. Yeah, so just to kind of elaborate a little bit, because I know I skimmed over it with the iOS. If you do install Xamarin on a MacBook, but you're working on Windows, once you have Xcode and Xamarin installed on your Mac, and once you have Xamarin installed on your Windows, you'll load up your Visual Studio environment, and as you load your first iOS project, you'll notice that you'll get prompted to connect to the MacBook. And so you will have this window that prompts you to connect over the network. It may locate your MacBook automatically if you're on the same network. If not, you can enter the IP address. And then you enter your credentials for your MacBook in that pop-up, and then you say OK, and then you're connected. And in order to enable that connection on your MacBook, you have to turn on remote login. Okay?
So do you have to do both, like design your UI for the Android and the iOS, like separately?
Yes. If you're using the native architecture, yes. So and if you are targeting both platforms, yes. I mean, you could just develop an Android application. You don't have to develop for Android and iOS.
No.
But if you are developing for both, in this architecture, yes, you develop your views in Android using XML layouts, and your views in iOS using the storyboards and the view controllers to wire that all up. So I alluded earlier to that whole business of sharing code, right? And I talked about the portable class library. How many people here have never used or developed a portable class library? I think it's a concept that was kind of introduced with Windows Phone or the store development. So if you haven't used it, essentially it is just like developing a class library. It's just a special type, and it's a template that you pick. And it gives you this option that when you're selecting your target properties, you select your target platform. So you'll create a portable class library, and you can go into the properties of that library, and you can pick your target platforms that you're going to share this library across. So what that means is the more platforms you specify to target, the smaller, the narrower window of the APIs that you will have available, because they will all use the same APIs that are compatible across all platforms. By default, you'll see when you're developing your Xamarin Android applications, if you pick a certain template, you will have a portable class library that automatically turns on the right options for you, and then you're off to the races. But if you ever have to develop an additional portable class libraries, make sure that you select Xamarin Android and Xamarin iOS as your targets. Okay. So NuGet. Everyone loves NuGet. Awesome. So Xamarin, there's tons of like portable class libraries and NuGet packages that are all available through NuGet that you can just install, add to your project. Tons of things that really help you to speed up your development. So JSON.NET, if you've ever used it, whether regardless of your platform, it's available to you when you're doing your Xamarin development. Things like the Microsoft BCL builds for connecting to, like, using HTTP client to connect to web services. That's available in your portable class library. You can install that in NuGet. So you'll start becoming familiar with a lot of the NuGet packages that help you speed up your development. James Montemagno is very well known for coding quite a lot. He codes demos, but he also codes a lot of reusable libraries that you guys can use in your projects. So you'll start to see that if you go into James Montemagno's GitHub, he's got quite a few NuGet packages that he's published that will help you speed up your development. So there's like cross-connectivity NuGet package, which helps you manage your network connectivity and check for network connectivity from the portable class library, which is really nice, but also from the platform-specific projects. So that you'll start to see that you can just throw these things in, and you're pretty much 25% started, but just from installing these packages. You have a lot of this code that's available to you. It's really nice. So aside from shared code using portable class libraries, there's also shared projects. The difference between creating a shared project and a portable class library is simply that the shared project links files into the platform-specific projects. The portable class library builds an independent DLL that you then reference from your portable class library, from your platform-specific projects. So you just think of shared projects as file linking. The thing that you can get into trouble with here, though, is if you have platform-specific code that you start intermingling in your shared project files, you have to start using those compiler directives to specify if it's Android, do this, if it's iOS, do this. And in your portable class library, you won't run into that problem because it won't let you do anything that is not compatible across all the devices because you only have the APIs that are available in that library. In shared projects, it's a little bit more loosey-goosey. So you definitely have to be careful when you're doing that. And if you start to see a lot of kind of spaghetti code in there with those compiler directives, you might want to rethink your architecture a little bit. And that's when you start thinking about more advanced things like dependency injection and setting up that kind of framework within your shared project or within your shared libraries.
Would there be any advantage of using shared projects over PCL? Is it available for legacy reason, or because it sounds like it's not the preferred way of doing it?
Yeah, for me, I like portable class libraries. I don't use shared projects. I don't know what the business case would be if you'd go with shared project over a portable class library.
I think it's more preference if anything. It can be easier in some cases to do a shared project. I'm trying to set up, portable class libraries, but and generally we suggest going to portable class library.
Yeah. Okay, here's a nice little graph to show some code sharing statistics among some applications that were developed. If anyone's heard of them, Calca, iCircuit, and TouchDraw. You can see that you get about 60 to 90% code reuse when you're working with Xamarin, portable class libraries or shared projects, and then AWI. So that's pretty nice. So when you're thinking about what's a really good incentive for me to start developing, or what's a good incentive for my team and at work to start developing, and you start seeing that how much code you can reuse and how efficient that is, it's really nice. All right. So, just going to pop over to the development environment. And I've already have everything preloaded because that's how things work. Okay. So essentially when you're creating a new project, I'll just kind of pop this up. You'll say File, New Project. And you'll know Xamarin is installed when you see there's a cross-platform section, there's an Android section, and there's an iOS section which has your templates. So when you're thinking about developing your first application and you want to target iOS and Android and Windows, you can go into cross-platform and select from one of the available templates. So blank app native portable, that's going to generate a default solution with Android, iOS, Windows, Windows Phone, and a single portable class library. Okay. Native shared is going to give you the same thing, but instead of a portable class library, you're going to have a shared project. And you have a class library as well. It says for Xamarin Forms, but then there's also, there should be one for portable. And UI test apps. So earlier I alluded to you want to develop, you can use Xamarin Test Cloud and to test your solutions. You can develop a UI test app to automate UI test scripts so that you can run these UI tests against your project. It can run in the simulator on the device. You don't have to push to Test Cloud. You can just have it run locally. That doesn't cost you anything. If you want to start pushing up to Test Cloud, then that will cost you something. Xamarin Test Cloud essentially is a service that runs where you can push up your application to thousands of devices that Xamarin keeps adding to. These are actual physical devices, these are not simulators, in order to run these automated UI tests so that you can validate that your application is good across a variety of devices. We'll just touch on that right now. So that's essentially your templates, and then there's even specific Android templates. So if you're actually thinking about developing just a specific Android Wear app, there's a template for that. OpenGL game. There's a bindings library. Bindings libraries are available, and what those are, essentially it is an opportunity for you to reuse an existing library. So say there's an Android Java library that was developed that you want ported over and you want to make use of in your Xamarin project. So you create this Xamarin bindings library, which essentially then just serves as a wrapper around that Java library. And it exposes the properties and methods that are available in it so that you can call it through from C#. And then the same applies for iOS. There's a bindings for iOS, which you could bring in an Objective-C library, and you can create that binding and then call through from C#. So then you can make use of those kind of libraries that are available. It's pretty nice. A lot of options there. So that's essentially where you get started to create your new application. I alluded earlier to connecting to an iOS bot, to MacBook for your iOS development. Essentially, there is this button, which is right here at the top. You can see, can everyone see that okay? And it looks like a little monitor, and as you hover over it, it'll say Xamarin Mac Agent, and it gives you the state of it, if it's connected or disconnected. So if I hit that, that'll pop up this dialog that allows me to see what MacBooks are on my network. This one's just on there because that is my MacBook. It's not turned on right now. It just saves it because I've connected to it previously, so it's still on the list. And then if I actually were to connect to it, it pops up another dialog which allows me to enter my credentials for the MacBook. And then once it's successfully connected, that icon will turn green. So that's how you know you're connected to your Mac, but I don't have it turned on right now. So let's take a look at what the project structure looks like. So there's this demo project which has a portable class library, an Android project, and an iOS project. The portable class library, if I right click on it and go down to properties, here's where I was talking about picking your targets. So you can see that at the bottom here, the targets that it has selected is like .NET Framework 4.5, ASP.NET Core, Windows 8, Xamarin Android, Xamarin iOS. So this means that I'm going to have access to a subset of APIs that are valid across all those platforms.
So different from the classic?
Pardon?
Different from the iOS classic?
iOS Classic is for the older iOS applications. So at recent, I think it was about a year ago, Apple required that you convert all of your applications from 32-bit to 64-bit. This Classic is for those old applications. So if you can see your portable class library, here in this case, we're using the MVVM pattern. So there's models, there's view models, and there's some service classes. And so all this code is shared among the platforms. So we have a model, and that essentially just represents an image. Great. We have a view model, which then makes use of that image and conducts a search. It's going to conduct an online search for images and then return me a collection of that image result. And so then the services, and I was talking about making those web calls earlier, your service calls. So you have that Bing search. You can see that it makes use of the HTTP client. It's making use of Microsoft's Cognitive API, Services API to conduct that search. So all of that's shared, and that's shared between the Android and the iOS project. So it's pretty nice that way. So you have that code that you're reusing. In the Android project, I have a main activity, and that's essentially what it's going to launch into. This main activity, which then loads a layout, a specific layout that I identify. Okay, so you can see the code, and this is just platform specific. This is just related to the views. It's just loading up the activity, setting up my recycler view, setting up my layouts, and all that stuff. So it's really nice. So just platform specific. There's nothing else as far as business logic in this application. And so let's take a look at the layout. Oh, of course it did. Okay, so my layout's not working, so let's go into source. I just recently updated, so I'm pretty sure something's out of sync. So awesome. Okay, so now you see this layout file I mentioned earlier. It's an XML layout. It's pretty nice. It's very similar if you've done Windows Phone development, XAML development, UWP development. A lot of this will feel familiar. I mean, obviously the elements are a little bit different, but just the concepts of designing your layout, this XML layout, will be very familiar to you, and setting up your properties and things like that, but they are Android specific. So this is an Android layout that is truly a native layout. Okay. And then in iOS, we have the storyboard. And I don't think I can load the storyboard right now because I don't have my MacBook hooked up. I need my MacBook turned on in order to be able to view the storyboard. So.
Is that remoted also, or you have to actually view it on that?
No, the storyboard itself is actually, like, the designer is right within Visual Studio. It won't load anything because right now because it needs an active connection to the Mac. So, but as I'm designing, it's all local. Like it's modifying the storyboard locally. But then when it builds and compiles, it builds and compiles on the MacBook using the Xcode, signing keys, all that good stuff. So let me show you what essentially this image search app looks like. This was developed by James Montemagno. So here we are I'm using Xamarin Android Player, which is a standalone emulator. I know I talked earlier about the Visual Studio Hyper-V ones, but I use Xamarin Android Player because I've had it installed. So let's do an image search. Throw out a word that you want me to look at. Keep it clean.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump?
That's not right.
That's not right. George, you may have to turn off the camera. Perfect. There you go. And so this application is essentially using an Android native layout, but using shared code to make those service calls, to pull those images, and to load that collection of data. And then that collection of data is consumed on the platform-specific side to display the result.
To be fair, can I do a search for Hillary Clinton?
Sure. I don't know why you guys want to make it political. Should never have let you guys pick. There we go. Nice pictures. And to end on a happy note. And it's pretty fast. Like, considering you know what's happening, the call is pretty quick. It loads up pretty quick. It seems very optimized. So it's really nice. There you go. That's That's a picture of the type of dog I have. I have a Samoyed. I'm absolutely in love with it, so we'll end on that happy note. Samoyeds always make me smile. All right, so that's really the high level of.
I have a question about portable libraries. Are there any restrictions regarding what API you can use? For example, my understanding just from your presentation is that you can use, for example, Microsoft technologies from an Android or iOS via a portable library. Yeah? For example, if I want to use Microsoft chatbot technology, can I put that in a portable library and call from these platforms?
Specifically, like a chatbot, like are you thinking about the RESTful API calls or actually the SDK?
The SDK.
SDK, I don't know if it's, I don't know, I haven't tried it, so I can't say for sure if it's supported. Have you played with it at all? I haven't played with it yet. I'll have to play with it and then I'll get back to you. Essentially, if there's something that's not supported in the portable class library, you won't be able to install the NuGet package for it, so you could try it. You can do a search in NuGet, see if that SDK is available. Attempt to install it. If it fails, then you know it's not supported. That's the thing about portable class libraries that I like, is you know right as you're developing what's available and what isn't. As you're developing the APIs and you're trying to access certain things that you're used to, you're not going to have access to them in the portable class libraries. In the shared project, you won't get that until you actually compile and run, and then you'll start seeing things crash and burn if you're trying to access something that's not accessible or available, right? So you can get yourself into a bit of a grind. Okay, so we saw that native applications, you have a shared backend, you have your platform-specific projects or UI, and it's pretty nice. So here's a list of some really useful APIs that are platform-specific. You know, battery, GPS, lights, notifications, all that kind of stuff. You'll find that you'll use a lot of that quite often when you're developing. More so, I guess, like notification settings. I do. So where's this slide going? What if we didn't have to write this code? What if we could share this, access this from shared code? So that's what I was alluding to earlier. Kind of start thinking about ways to architect the application so that you can make use of some of these platform-specific implementations within your portable class library. Okay, so there's a ton of plugins. As I mentioned earlier, James Montemagno's notorious for developing a ton of plugins. There's actually a GitHub repo for accessing some of those. But before I end this, I just wanted to kind of clarify that dependency injection portion of it. So essentially, what those plugins allow you to do is you have kind of an abstraction in your portable class library, these interfaces, which define how you use like text-to-speech or battery or notifications, and then you can define the methods that expose them. And then you have platform-specific implementations of them in each project. So the actual implementation is developed in Android and iOS, and then those platform-specific implementations, you just kind of inherit or implement the abstracted concept. So you have an interface in your portable class library that's like iNotification, and in Android you implement iNotification, and iOS you implement iNotification. You actually put that platform-specific implementation in both of those, and then at runtime you pass that platform-specific implementation to the portable class library, and so then you can actually start triggering notifications from your portable class library, for example. So that's kind of the high-level view. I don't have much time, I'm running late, sorry. So that's just kind of a very quick and dirty like explanation of what they were alluding to and what I was alluding to back at here. It's like, what if you want to access those kind of platform-specific implementations from your shared code, you can do it. It just requires some additional architecture, which you have to look into and learn more about. So, if you haven't done it. So take a time and a break. You can ask me any questions. If your head's a little spinning, I don't blame you. I apologize. There's my contact information at the bottom as well, but I'm here all day. So feel free to ask any questions. And then I'm going to tear down them a little bit so that Mark Artiega can come up next with the Xamarin Form Stock.
And that's the whole point, like it's trying to do what changes to this.
demos that you've seen, as well as the hands-on labs. So definitely do that over the course of lunch. We're gonna take an hour break, so from 12 to 1, it's just, we're gonna eat, we're gonna get our machines going and set up, and just network and talk to other people. If you're having issues with your environment, definitely grab Mark, grab Jonathan, or myself. We'll come over and help you get that sorted out. And pizzas at the back. If you are a vegetarian, there is a vegetarian option. There's 3 stacks of pizzas right there. The vegetarian option is the 3rd stack. So have at it. Have a good lunch, guys. Thanks. There's a README file that gives you instructions step by step on what to do, and you can start off in the starter project. Open that up. Make sure you can build it. If you're having trouble building and running, and you're running into kind of obstacles with that, let us know. But don't let that hold you up. Try and get through some of the steps of understanding like the architecture of the application, the code, where the code goes, where the layouts are, how to formulate the project, and kind of get your app, architected. And then we'll help you with some build issues where we can. Okay, so definitely get started. Raise your hand if you are having issues. I'm gonna come over and see you, and then we'll, between Mark, myself, and John, we will help you guys out. So, yep, get to it. By updating the NuGet packages, and you know that your Android SDK is up to date. I would recommend just creating a new project. Pick blank Xamarin Forms portable template in the cross-platform section. Build that, and if that builds successfully, then just start adding in the project files from that starter project into that new project shell. There seems to be some kind of references that seem to be mucked up.
Yeah, I think it's what happens is when you install some of the Android support library components or NuGet packages, because of the way Google's licensed them, we can't actually redistribute those. So at build time, it's actually going out and fetching that from Google for you. And it's like a 260 meg file. And so given network conditions, I've seen it once already where it's been a corrupt download. So if, the other thing that we can do is I can put up the path where you can delete some files from and try rebuilding and see if it takes. Yeah, that one's a tricky one to do in this setting.
Yeah.
This is all that you're